Hi, folks. We're Tacitus today. Tacitus Day, your pushback channel. Thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about corporate, big brand name corporate, no less, girl bosses. So we're talking diversity, equity, inclusion, affirmative action, hiring, DEI hiring, female, gender quotas, race quotas, all this sort of stuff. So, but also to indicate and to show and demonstrate how once really competitive, commercially competitive, innovative, big brand names have become nothing more than bureaucracies just feeding off the government teat, in effect. But, and this is across the Western world. So. So anyway, this is the second meeting I've been to just quite recently, where you go into the room and there's five women in there, and they're in the upper middle, they're director level type. They're in the upper middle range, reporting to the C-level executives, that type of thing. And so there's five in there. There's only one white person. And the rest are there's two Indians, an Arab, a Asian person, and a white chick. But the white chick comes from a place where blacks are in the majority, or non-whites rather, in the majority. So anyway, that's the sort of the people in the room, and we come into two straight white boys, and you could almost sense the sudden sort of so their sort of play as soon as we walk in the door is just to show that they're not only morally superior, but they're in control. And you little boys, and they're one of the chicks was behaving like she was a kindergarten teacher, bossing little kids around. That's how we were treated when we came in, which is absurd, but nonetheless, they don't know how to relate to their only concept of power is, me adult, you child, that they can't sort of understand beyond that. Now they can't, demonstrate their power by their expertise because they don't have any. They're affirmative action hires, so they just don't have they can't demonstrate it by their knowledge of the business or the industry or anything like that, because they don't have that either. They've been elevated, well beyond. They haven't had to work their way up. They've jumped from junior administrative assistant right up to the senior levels, which is again how these things go for these women, and all affirmative action hiring, but these women. None of them have got any legitimacy to their position or their authority, so they do revert to the only thing they know is, me adult, you child. That's the only way they can play it. They just haven't got another way of doing it. So anyway, we're in the room now. We can't talk about sort of technical things because we're talking about a particular product here and we're assisting a product developer. So that's our sort of position in this scheme of things. And we can't go into technical because they don't understand it, and there's no point. Now, as they interact between themselves, which they did more of that than they did with us, really. This is where the doll's house thing came in. I remember friends of mine at school who had younger sisters, and they would have a few of their friends around, and how they behaved and how they spoke to each other. And there was the boss chick in the group, which is usually the girl whose place, and she would give out orders of what the others had to do. And if you want to, you want to be on my good side, if you want to be part of this sort of little coven, you better behave and not displease me. And the head chick, or one of fancies herself as a head chick, even pulled school mom type looks of disapproval, things. And the way those women were behaving in the office just a few days ago is the same way. You couldn't tell the difference between how they were behaving and how those younger sisters, and I'm talking about, I would have been, I say 13 or 14 or something, and the younger sisters were like 10 or 11. So that type of age difference, and how they used to behave, how those 10 or 11-year-old girls used to behave, the little doll's house games they played, and how, okay, you have to do this and you have to do that. And this was the same. There wasn't a difference. You could not have seen a difference between the two. So that just goes to show how fucking juvenile it is, putting these diversity hire women into these executive roles. And now, in addition to that, no one wants to make a decision or take responsibility for it. So if events sort of start to move in the direction, well, gee, we have to do something here, we have to make a decision or make a commitment or give an undertaking, or as soon as that occurs, as soon as they realize they're in that position, then they just switch to committee mode. Everything's then done by committee. No one's going to take the responsibility. Nobody wants the responsibility. So the meeting that should have lasted an hour went for 3 hours, all because of this girl boss committee bullshit sort of stuff, and the theatrics too, like the boss chick, holding her hand up in the air, like gesticulating like she's some royalty. Okay, I want you to do that. Would you do that for me, please? And you do that. And again, but they talk to each other like they would talk to a child. The women seem to accept that from each other, that's the price you pay for being over promoted and for managing to be paid a lot of money to do nothing and to avoid responsibility. Hey, I'm paid $300,000 a year to do fuck all. So if you want me to turn somersaults and swing from the chandelier and play little child, being good little child, I'll do it for that sort of money. I'm really worth not even a third of that in the real world, but I'm making all this money, getting paid all this money, so I'll tolerate the sort of de facto level humiliations that you have to put up. I wouldn't put up with being spoken to like that, but that's just me. But they seem willing to tolerate those humiliations is probably a too strong a word, but they seem to tolerate those sort of dismissive tones on the basis it's some greater good purpose is being served by it. So now, sort of some of the interesting other things that came out. Two of the people were Indian. Now the person, the CEO of the, I don't know if it's the area or the division or the region or something, is Indian, and he's got quite a few Indians around him as well. And it came to the issue of somehow it came up that Australia had a shortage of did Australia have a shortage of labour, as in not enough workers, in spite of the mass migration, in spite of the very high levels of unemployment, in spite of some jobs that are getting like 500 plus applications, even places out in the middle of nowhere, for a skilled job are getting 30, 40 applications, which is off the charts to what it would normally be. And all this is down to the mass migration. So in spite of all that, and what interested me here was that the two Indian chicks in the room, as soon as this idea of labour, they almost jumped out of their skin. Say, oh, that's right, massive labour shortage, huge labour shortage. But there are a lot of people in India who would very much like to come and fill that void. They are willing to work and come here, and straight away they jumped onto it. And every Indian I talk to now, they're effectively an immigration agent. Every fucking Indian, seriously, every Indian in Australia is a de facto immigration agent. That they are all, their sole focus and purpose isn't to be here and do integrating. It's to make sure more Indians get into Australia, whether it's family members, people from their village. They don't give a fuck. But as many bringing Indians in at all. Now, is there a labour shortage? Well, no, there's not. There's a shortage of people willing to work for absolutely shit wages and conditions. There's a shortage. But it's only because of the structure of the workplace in certain areas that's the problem. It's not that there's a shortage of workers, far from it. But these Indians just jumped all over it. You couldn't stop them talking about it. That yes, there is a massive labour shortage, but I know many people in India that want to come here. Sure you do. And I've noticed this with every Indian that I've spoken to. They insist there is a huge labour shortage in Australia, and they'll get all their fucking buddies and the peasants out of their village or something like that to come and fill this imaginary, it doesn't exist by the way, this imaginary labour shortage. So again, the meeting sort of wound on, and more because of the posturing and the little, silly little girly, doll's house, sandpit posturing games that were taking forever. And they all sounded and talked like they were bureaucrats, and none of them wanted to. They frequently talked about how they were being undervalued. The company didn't value their brilliance. What brilliance were they talking about? Well, I don't know. But this is where it's coming. And that was not too long ago, certainly within my lifetime, and for much of the early part of my working career, you would never go into a room of senior people there and have women in there. Never. Maybe an HR person, but otherwise it was all men, and men that had worked their way up. Now, it wasn't perfect. There were idiot men who had some of those, they were still around. But at least you had a decent chance of bumping into someone who really knew their shit, knew their stuff. They'd worked their way up. They'd achieved and performed at various levels, and then they'd come to a more senior supervisory managerial level. That's not the case anymore. None of these women have had to do. None of them have had to do that. There's one was a petty bureaucrat somewhere, and then jumped almost straight from that into this $300,000 a year job, and still is is a junior admin person. That's all they are. They don't know squat. In fact, it was embarrassing trying to deal with them. One woman there she was the HR director of planning or something like that. And so I just casually asked her, how many people do you have in the company here? And she didn't know. In fact, she almost had a heart attack being asked a question. Someone's asking me a question. I'm supposed to know something. And she blushed and didn't know what to say, and ummed and ahed and hemmed and hawed. And she obviously was in such a state of anxiety over being asked a simple, you're the HR planning person and you don't know how many people in the company. And so I was even on the verge of, well, I better change the subject, otherwise she's going to have a heart attack here. Oh, I suppose it's about 200, so somewhere around there, about 200. So, that's fine. I don't know exactly. No, that's all right. So it doesn't matter. It's okay. And then you're sort of inclined to want to talk about the weather or something, just to change the subject. But it was a disgraceful show of incompetence, ineptitude, looking at over-promoted women who are acting like fucking schoolgirls, playing silly little doll's house games. But that's the state of now. You say, okay, well, they've got an office out in the middle of nowhere, and who can? No. This is a big name, multinational, big name brand. They're premier player in their space. They're top line players, and they've got some of the most expensive, prestigious office real estate in Australia. And they've got 3 floors of this building. And, you look at the sort of money, and we're talking, gazillions of dollars a year. And really, they fitted it out very nicely. God knows what they spent on that. The staff amenities room is just pristine. Very, very impressive. They've got a refrigerator there with just about every imaginable, soft soda type beverage that you can think of in there. They've got, chilled, sparkling water. There's nothing they don't have. They've got bowls of fruit and everything, all that around the place. Very, very impressive and very well done. So they're sparing no expense to that. Every few months they put on a bash for the a party, if you will, for their their biggest their suppliers, customers, all that sort of thing. And it was and I've been to one of them, and what a sumptuous affair it was. I mean, fuck me, no expense was spared on that. So now, just looking at this business, this was started by a guy, an inventor. Originally, way back when, this was started by an inventor that invented a product that was very, very leading edge for its time. Did a lot of things, very impressive, and he had a decent sort of company. I don't know, it was pretty small. It's like less than 50 people, but he was going places. It would have turned into a big company. But then a venture capital firm swooped in and bought it up. And the guy walked away with plenty of money in his back pocket. So the inventor, So then the venture capital firm then folds that company into another company who's doing kind of similar things, with similar type products. So they folded, and then this created then a new company, and they've grown not through selling more, but through acquisition. So they then use that as the buying engine with the venture capital firm in the background, and they're an offshoot of BlackRock, by the way. And they just then buy up other companies near. So they have. It's not. I wouldn't call it a monopoly, or probably not even quite an oligopoly, but it's certainly a cartel where there are now 5 players total in the game, whereas not long ago there were 32 players, and now there are only 5 because they bought each other out. And the way because it's a big venture capital firm, big money firm, big end of town financially, they own a lot of other companies, and the other companies in the group are required to buy their products. So they round robin fatten each other up with sales, and a lot of these companies don't really need the product, but they'll know you've got to buy it. If you want to be looked after, you want your bonuses, you want this, you want us to be backing you in the stock market and on the floats, which will make you rich. You do what the fuck we tell you. So there's that. And on top of that, there's a lot of government business gets brought in the door. So they're effectively able to pressure government to say, if you're going to call a bid or a tender or a contract, you need to insist that the people that bid have to have our product. And various methods of inducement and coercion are used so that they can artificially create bigger customers with bigger margins and so on and so on. So in the end, this big brand name firm, which began again as a competitive, innovative business, doesn't have to compete for anything anymore. Now, sure, there's some at the margins they might compete, but if like there's only a group of 5, if a customer isn't happy with sort of number 1, then they're going to go to the number 2 or number 3 as well. So they still keep the business within the family, and they don't have to compete on margins or anything like that. They can demand and get premium prices because of the controlled cartel nature of that segment of the marketplace. So because of that, because they don't have to compete, because it's got the big money behind them, which is nearly all Jewish money, because of that, they're able to play games of which they are on a grand scale, games of wokeness and affirmative action and race gender quotas and so on. So that out of the even the guy who's looking after the reception area is a very, very gay Asian guy. And the other people walking around, the senior managers that were there, as in the C-level, they're all Indian and Chinese and that sort of thing. So I'd say at best, maybe, absolute best, 20% of the people in the company are white, and the majority of those are women. So say 6-7% of straight white males. That's it. So that's like 25 years ago, it would have been close on 100% straight white male. That's how quickly things have changed and how completely and totally they've changed. Now, I don't really care who's in what job. I mean, it makes no difference to me. But the issue is that people who are blatantly, manifestly not qualified, I mean, not even close, are being shoehorned into these positions, but they're being paid the sort of money that someone that knows what they're doing would be paid. And on that basis, we're all being horribly ripped off. And the next generation of competent management has been gutted. It's gone because all those roles have been filled by affirmative action, do nothing, parasite, just passengers on the train, people, and they're all bureaucrats. They talk like bureaucrats, think like bureaucrats. The big sign of a bureaucrat, I think, one of the big signs is that when you first meet them, the first thing they do is tell you what they can't do. That's the opening. Whereas a commercial person in a competitive marketplace will tell you what they can do. But so the opening sort of 5 minutes, 10 minutes of conversation or of talking from them when we got there was them telling us this is what we can't do. Don't expect too much from us because we can't do this. So that's the opening thing. And these are the people that are meant to be, supposed to be the engine room of driving driving the commercial side of the business. It was really fucking sad. What can I say? You've been with Tassos today, your pushback channel, and thank you for listening.